Sarah Thompson had been teaching high school mathematics at Lincoln High for 12 years. She was the kind of teacher students remembered long after graduation: calm voice, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, and an uncanny ability to make quadratic equations feel like solvable puzzles instead of punishments. Her classroom smelled faintly of dry erase markers and the vanilla candle she kept on her desk to mask teenage body odor. Every afternoon at 3:15 p.m., when the final bell rang, she erased the board, straightened the desks into perfect rows, and drove home in her sensible silver Camry to the man she had loved since college. Ryan Thompson owned 3 car dealerships along the interstate corridor outside Charlotte, North Carolina. Ryan was loud, charming, and tan year-round. He sold mostly trucks and SUVs to contractors, real estate developers, and weekend warriors who wanted to feel rugged. He wore cowboy boots with suits, slapped backs too hard, and called everyone buddy. People trusted him the moment he flashed that wide, white smile. By 38 he had built a small empire: the main lot with the gleaming showroom, a used car annex, a boat dealership on Lake Norman, a vacation cabin on the Outer Banks, and a 6-bedroom house with a pool in Ballantyne that looked like it belonged in a magazine. To the outside world, Ryan and Sarah were the perfect couple. He was the flashy entrepreneur, she was the steady, supportive wife who graded papers at the kitchen island while he grilled steaks on the back patio. They had no children, something Ryan always said we'll get around to eventually, and Sarah had poured her nurturing energy into her students instead. She never complained about his late nights closing deals, or the way his phone buzzed constantly, or how he smelled faintly of someone else's coconut-scented lotion when he finally came to bed. The first real crack appeared on a Tuesday in March. Sarah had gone to the dealership to drop off Ryan's forgotten lunch. She walked into the showroom carrying a Tupperware of leftover lasagna and saw him leaning over the finance desk, laughing with a woman she didn't recognize. The woman was 26, blonde, legs for days, wearing a tight red dress that looked expensive and impractical for a Tuesday afternoon. Ryan's hand rested possessively on the small of her back. When he spotted Sarah, he straightened quickly, smile faltering for half a second before snapping back into place. "Hey, babe. You didn't have to bring me lunch." He took the container, kissed her cheek too hard, and introduced the woman as Kaylee, our new social media manager. Kaylee gave Sarah a once-over, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile, and said, "Cute dress." "Very, teacher." Sarah drove home with the radio off. She told herself it was nothing. Ryan flirted with everyone. It was how he sold cars. But the coconut lotion kept showing up. And the late nights stretched longer. And one Saturday when Sarah suggested they spend the weekend at the Outer Banks cabin, Ryan said he was swamped with inventory and sent her alone. She sat on the deck watching the Atlantic waves and opened their joint banking app for the first time in months, just to check the balance for grocery money. The balance was fine. But the transactions weren't. There were regular cash withdrawals of $500, $800, sometimes $1,200, always on Fridays. Charges at high-end boutiques in South Park Mall. Hotel rooms at the Ballantyne Resort on weekdays. A $4,200 charge at a jewelry store she'd never heard of. And boat fuel charges at Lake Norman marinas on days Ryan claimed to be at the main lot. Sarah stared at the screen until it went dark. Then she opened her laptop and began what she would later call the ledger. As a math teacher, Sarah understood patterns. As a betrayed wife, she learned precision. She started small. Every evening after Ryan fell asleep, which was easy now that he came home drunk on victory and someone else's perfume, she photographed his phone screen while it charged. She installed a keylogger on the home computer he rarely used. She requested paper statements from every account they shared. She drove to the dealership on her planning period and surprised him with coffee, taking mental notes of which employees looked away when she walked in. Within 3 weeks she had a timeline. Kaylee, full name Kaylee Madison Brooks, was indeed the social media manager. Her Instagram was public and thirsty: bikini photos on Ryan's boat, champagne brunch selfies with hashtags like #bossbabe and #livingmybestlife, and one particularly nauseating post of her hand wearing a diamond tennis bracelet with the caption, "Someone knows how to spoil his queen." Sarah cross-referenced dates. Every time Kaylee posted from a tropical location, Ryan had told Sarah he was at a regional sales conference. Every cash withdrawal lined up with Kaylee's shopping posts. But the real discovery came when Sarah started looking at the dealership books. Ryan had given her access years ago in case something happens to me. He'd never revoked it. Sarah logged into the dealership's QuickBooks from home and found 2 sets of numbers, the clean set shown to the bank and the IRS, and the real set hidden in password-protected folders labeled miscellaneous. Cash sales were being recorded as below-cost promotions or not recorded at all. Customers who paid cash for used cars were given handwritten receipts, and the money never made it to the bank deposit. Those cash bundles were skimmed, some went into Ryan's pocket, some paid for Kaylee's rent in a luxury apartment in Uptown, some funded weekend gambling trips to Cherokee Casino. Sarah built spreadsheets. Color-coded. Tabs for cash skim, personal expenses charged to business, gifts to Kaylee, boat fuel, hotel rooms, jewelry, and taxable income hidden. By May she had enough evidence to put Ryan in federal prison for years. But prison wasn't what Sarah wanted. She wanted fairness. She wanted the life she had quietly funded to remain hers. So she waited. Ryan filed for divorce on July 10th. He did it with flair. Had the papers served to her at school during summer professional development. The process server walked into the library where teachers were gathered and handed her the envelope in front of 20 colleagues. Sarah thanked him politely, put the papers in her tote bag, and continued the session on new grading software. That night Ryan moved into Kaylee's uptown apartment. He left a note on the kitchen counter. Sarah. This just isn't working anymore. I need someone who matches my drive and ambition. You're a great teacher, but I've outgrown this life. I'll be generous, $50K and the Camry. The house, dealerships, boats, and cabin are mine. I earned them. Let's not make this ugly. Ryan. Sarah read the note twice, folded it neatly, and placed it in a new folder labeled Exhibit A. She hired Daniel Whitaker, a gray-haired divorce attorney known in Charlotte legal circles as the Bulldog. He'd grown up poor, put himself through law school at night, and had no patience for entitled men who thought money made them untouchable. When Sarah laid out her binders, 6 of them, tabbed and indexed, Daniel whistled low. Most clients bring me tears and stories, he said. You brought me a prosecution. They planned carefully. Sarah would play the grieving, cooperative wife. She would agree to mediation dates. She would cry on cue when Ryan bragged in public. She would let him believe she was broken. All summer, Ryan paraded Kaylee around town. They showed up at the same restaurants Sarah frequented. Kaylee posted photos from the Outer Banks cabin, Sarah's cabin, decorated with the quilts Sarah's mother had made. Ryan bought Kaylee a new Jeep Gladiator from his own lot and registered it in her name for content. Sarah kept teaching summer school algebra to rising freshmen who'd failed. She graded papers on the patio while Ryan's new life played out on social media. She smiled at parents during open house and told them their children were improving beautifully. Inside, she was ice. The divorce hearing was scheduled for early December in Mecklenburg County Family Court. 2 days before the hearing, Ryan threw a party at the main dealership to celebrate new beginnings. He invited half the town. Kaylee wore a white dress and called herself the future Mrs. Thompson. Ryan gave a speech about hard work and vision and how he couldn't wait to close this chapter. Sarah wasn't invited, of course. She stayed home and finalized her exhibits. The morning of the hearing was cold and clear. Sarah wore a charcoal suit, low heels, hair in a neat bun. She looked every inch the professional educator. Ryan arrived in a new tailor-made suit, Kaylee clinging to his arm in a fur coat and 6-inch heels despite the courthouse steps being slick with ice. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Ryan couldn't resist. Last chance to settle, Sarah, he said loudly enough for onlookers to hear. I'm feeling generous. Take the $50K and walk away clean. Kaylee smirked. Yeah, hon, buy yourself something nice. Maybe a new wardrobe. Sarah looked at them both for a long moment, then said quietly, I'm good. Thank you. Inside the courtroom, Ryan's attorney, a slick man named Preston who wore too much cologne, opened with confidence. He painted Ryan as the sole breadwinner, Sarah as a part-time public servant who contributed nothing to the marital estate. He submitted tax returns showing the dealership profits as Ryan's separate business income. Daniel Whitaker waited his turn. When he stood, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Your Honor, he began in his slow Carolina drawl, we concede that Mr. Thompson is indeed a successful businessman. What we dispute is how that success was achieved and who actually funded the lifestyle he now wishes to keep exclusively for himself and his associate. He began with the house. Bank statements showed Sarah's teacher salary and summer school pay had covered the mortgage for 8 of the last 10 years, while Ryan's business account paid sporadic lump sums that matched large cash deposits from unreported sales. Next, the boats. Title records showed Sarah's signature on every loan because her credit score was higher. Insurance payments came from the joint account she replenished. The cabin. Purchased with a teacher's pension loan Sarah took out in her name alone because Ryan's debt-to-income ratio was too high. Then Daniel moved to the dealership. He projected Sarah's spreadsheets onto the courtroom screen. Color-coded. Immaculate. Cash sales recorded in the hidden books but missing from tax returns, $487,000 over 4 years. Personal expenses charged to the business, Kaylee's apartment rent, her Jeep, jewelry, trips to Aruba and Vegas. Daniel laid out the anonymous tips Sarah had sent to the North Carolina Department of Revenue and the IRS in October, complete with scanned receipts, hidden QuickBooks files, and bank deposit slips showing cash never deposited. Revenue agents had already begun an audit. Liens were filed. The main dealership lot was padlocked the week before Thanksgiving. Ryan went pale. Kaylee shifted in her seat, fur coat suddenly too warm. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Ramirez, reviewed the evidence for 40 silent minutes. When she spoke, her voice was steel. The court finds overwhelming evidence of dissipation of marital assets, tax fraud, and intentional concealment. The dealership entities are marital property subject to equitable distribution. Given the ongoing criminal investigation, those assets will remain frozen until resolution. She awarded Sarah the house, the cabin, both boats, the contents of all joint accounts, and half the frozen dealership equity once the government took its share. Ryan received his clothing, his now repossessed new truck, and the obligation to pay Sarah's attorney fees. Kaylee stood up abruptly in the middle of the ruling. Ryan, we need to talk outside. Now. They argued in the hallway. Voices echoed. You told me this was clean. You said she'd get nothing. Baby, I can fix this. You're broke. The IRS took everything. I'm not living in some apartment with a teacher's salary. The last thing Sarah heard as she walked past them toward the exit was Kaylee's heels clacking away and Ryan calling her name in a broken voice. 3 months later. Ryan's dealerships were sold at auction to pay back taxes and penalties. He declared personal bankruptcy. The mansion went on the market, Sarah bought out the equity with a teacher's mortgage and kept it. Ryan moved into a 1-bedroom apartment above a tire shop. His commercial driver's license was all he had left of value. He drove a tow truck for a while, then, after a DUI, lost that too. In a twist that felt almost poetic, the community college needed an adjunct to teach remedial math in the evenings. Ryan applied because it was the only job he could get without a background check showing pending tax charges. On the first night of class, he walked into the classroom and stopped dead. Sarah was there. Not as a student, as a guest speaker invited by the department chair to talk about real-world applications of algebra in finance and budgeting. She stood at the whiteboard in the same charcoal suit, writing compound interest formulas with calm precision. Ryan stood frozen in the doorway. Sarah glanced up, met his eyes for a moment, and gave him the smallest, politest nod, an acknowledgement between colleagues. Then she turned back to the board and continued the lesson. Ryan took his place at the instructor's desk, voice shaking as he called roll. The students never knew that the quiet, broken man teaching them how to balance a checkbook had once owned half the trucks in the county. Or that the confident woman demonstrating forensic accounting techniques with color-coded spreadsheets had balanced more than numbers. She had balanced justice. And for the first time in years, Sarah's ledger was perfectly, beautifully even.